Okay, guys. Well, welcome to our fifth episode. It's hard to believe it's five already of What's Next Beyond Service. And I want to make sure I introduce Sarah Carell. Sarah is my sidekick in this venture. She is the power of our story. So her platform brings in folks like me that are contributors that are either veterans or first responders that contribute with stories, either their personal stories or like me, they'll bring folks in like our guest today, and we'll talk about all the great things that they're doing that are worth sharing. Because there's folks out there who are wanting inspiration, they're wanting to understand how folks overcome things, how they, look to that next career, whatever it may be. We want to bring people like that in to help share their stories so that there's just goodness for everybody. So, Sarah, thank you again for being my sidekick here and for being on episode 5 with me. I am very, very grateful for your help with this, and I'm looking forward to any cool questions that you're going to have for our guest today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, with that, what I want to do is I want to introduce here for episode 5, the Ukulele Lady. And for those of you that are on LinkedIn, you probably absolutely know who Olivia Perez Breland is. If you don't, then I highly recommend that you look her up on LinkedIn and you send her a request to connect, and you will not be sorry. In the pregame on today's episode, I was chatting with Olivia, and I told her, I said, hey, the first time I saw you on LinkedIn, there was just something about you. I don't know what it was, but you're very likable and you're upbeat and you do the social media thing well. And I was kind of captivated and I was intrigued. I wanted to see, well, what is she going to talk about next? And there's just some people that get this media, this, social media platform. And I can see that you absolutely do. So, Olivia, welcome to What's Next Beyond Service. We're excited to have you on. Again, this is episode 5. There's been a lot of good guests, and you are certainly, as I said, a top shelf guest. So I'm going to just give you a couple seconds to allow you to give yourself a quick introduction, and then we're going to hop right into the meat and potatoes of this interview.
Sounds good. Well, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm grateful for you today for 2 reasons. And first reason is we're not live streaming, so that brought my anxiety level down pretty significantly. The second reason is we're on Zoom, and I don't know if you are familiar with the most wonderful feature of Zoom, and that is the beauty filter. Most streaming platforms don't have this beauty filter, so I am grateful today for it.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Thank you for having me. And thanks for being on Zoom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who knew? I mean, my face looks a little red. I got to probably figure out how to make that work.
I'll show you
probably
after
too much coffee. But cool. All right. Yeah. You get older and you start thinking about stuff like that, at least for me, but well, no, that's cool. Well, one of the reasons I brought you in, as I just spoke about, was your presence on LinkedIn. I think that's cool, and giving folks another venue to expand their palette, I think, is a good thing. Something else that's really cool that certainly caught my eye is that you are a military spouse, and I can't recall. Is your husband in the Navy?
Army.
Army. Yeah. Okay. I'll do my 20 push-ups after the show. But yeah, so you have that experience of having to get up and move when your husband is called to the next duty station, or maybe you've stayed behind and he's gone to school or whatever. And so you had to, do those things without your spouse. And there's so much that's a show of itself. And so I see you as an advocate in a big way for folks that are in your boat, these military spouses, and guys certainly are military spouses too, that may be following their wives' careers. And so it intrigues me that you've taken that, on the mantle to want folks to understand what it's about and to see that there is light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to, the job search and making yourself more marketable. As I said in my advertisement that I put on LinkedIn about this, that you're a master marketer, and that's the other thing. I think you get that there's something natural with you in the marketing thing. So we'll talk about that as well. So and then we're going to chat a bit about what you're doing now with. Let's see here. Why is my computer acting funny here? Give me 1 second. I apologize.
No worries. You lost your outline, huh?
Well, no, I don't know what it is. It's trying to load something here.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, it went away, so that's good.
That's good.
So anyhow, sorry about that. So I want to also talk about what you're doing now with higher military, kind of the backstory with how you came across them, the discussions about the job and hiring, and then absolutely what you're doing now, sharing the goodness of working with them, and then anything that's coming up that you want to talk about as well. So, all right, well, let's talk about your education. So you went to NYU. That's kind of a big deal to get into NYU, right? That's not everyone gets in.
It was a big deal. Yeah. So I actually went to a performing arts high school in California, my last 2 years of high school. And so most of us were trying to get into these, these big name schools, be it Juilliard or Tisch or, any of the other, the Ivy League of the performing arts schools. Right. And many of our alumni from the Performing Arts High School ended up getting into a lot of these schools, Cornish, I could name them all. But so I went to NYU, Tisch School of the Arts, and I studied dance there. I didn't finish there, because I was young and dumb and I made a lot of unwise choices. But I did finish my degree eventually. I finished it back home in Mississippi, but I did get my bachelor's degree in dance. And then I had a baby and married a soldier and got my master's degree later. So yeah, you know how life happens. But
absolutely. And you mentioned the thing about being younger, and I know when you're younger, you think you know more than you do. Or you think that decision's a good decision, or that it's an informed decision. And I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about, certainly, but I have to maybe talk a little low now because my daughter is here, but I see that with my daughters, when you talk about certain things, I've learned just to kind of, you can't give advice all the time, right?
It's
so
true. Mine are 19 and 24, and you watch the choices that they make and you understand that this is a season, and the season, we're all in different seasons of life, and this is where they are, and this is where hopefully they will eventually be. So we let them make their choices and accept the consequences.
That's perfect. You couldn't have said that any better. That's absolutely. So, yeah. So as you said, you finished up in Mississippi. So you're from Mississippi then?
I am. Yep. I'm from Mississippi. So I actually went to a performing arts high school, which was a boarding school. And then from there went to NYU Tisch School of the Arts, and then came back home to Mississippi and lived life for a few years before I met my soldier.
Yeah. Awesome. And so where your master's was at Belhaven University, where is that located?
So my undergraduate degree is from Belhaven University, which is in Jackson, Mississippi.
Okay.
And my master's degree is from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro.
Okay.
I pursued that as a stay-home mom when my younger daughter was born.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting when it comes to education. A lot of times, at least the way I see it, it's all about timing, right? It's timing, and then certainly making sacrifices to get to the end state of across the stage and getting that sheepskin. I wound up getting my master's when I was a young captain back in the I guess it was the late 90s. And I didn't have my radar on for it. One of the guys I worked with who was in the Navy, I was at it's called EWTG Land, Expeditionary Warfare Training Group Atlantic. And you had the Marine Corps and the Navy together. And one of the guys who was in the Navy, he was a lieutenant commander. So he was in 04, I was in 03, and we became buds. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to get my master's in public administration, financial management, and you are too." Like, what? So he talked me into it, and we got into a great cohort. And I probably wouldn't have done it, maybe, but it was nice to be encouraged and to go through with a group of folks that are like-minded. It's made it easier.
Yeah.
But education is a big deal. It's
Right.
not, bachelor's and masters aren't for, but education in terms of making yourself smarter and more capable. That's so important, no matter what you do. Whether you're enlisted in the military and want to better yourself, college is a great thing. But so are the trades, and
Right.
so are the IT things that we get into. So as long as you're learning and growing, that's so important in life.
Agreed. Yeah. No, we've, in our family, we've always had very strong feelings about education. When I got my degree, I took on, a tremendous amount of student loan debt, and it was not the best decision. And so now as a parent, I have taught my daughters to, consider what you want to do and work backwards. So, unless you can fill in the blank, there's no reason to take out debt. There's no reason to even enroll in school unless you can say, I want to be a fill in the blank, and then you work backwards. So I want to be a CPA. Well, then you need to get your master's degree in accounting, which means you need to get your undergrad degree in accounting, which means you need to do well on the SAT so that you can get a great scholarship to get that undergrad, to get the master's degree, to become the CPA, right?
Absolutely.
And so with my youngest daughter, when she was in high school, we said, so fill in the blank. I want to be a what? Because until you can say what you want to be, you are not enrolling in a program. We're not taking out debt. We're doing none of those things because it's a complete waste of time and a waste of money. So eventually she was able to say, I want to be a vet tech. Perfect. So we knew exactly how to work backwards. We knew what to do in high school. We knew what sort of, college courses to enroll her in. And we worked backwards, and it was a brilliant methodology. But if I had not taken on tremendous debt, I would not have known to save my children from that same pain. So yeah.
No, that's fantastic. That backwards planning is so important in life and in business, for those very reasons. When you're talking money, when you're talking time, a lot of folks have to take on the debt. I was blessed. I was fortunate that the military paid for my master's degree. At the time, it was 75-25. They paid 75 and I paid 25. And then not long after that, it went to 100%. But I still was like, hey, that's a deal. Only paying 25% for your master's is fantastic.
Yeah.
But, with your kids, that's absolutely right. My youngest was going into political science, and right before she went to school, she decided, I want to do what I really want to do, and that's forensic science. And it was like, oh, wow. And so before class started, her first year, somehow she met with the dean of the school and impressed him. And he said, usually this has to go through a process and it takes time, but I'm approving you today. And he signed off on it. And she called me and goes, oh my God, that. And I was like, that's so cool. But,
That's awesome.
so she got into that, and then she got a master's as a criminalist, so she's followed that path. And my youngest daughter, both my kids are smart because they have their mother's, brain power. They've got my stick to itness, but they've got her intelligence. So they easily figured out, what they needed to do. And so my youngest, she went into planetary geology, which is, that's crazy because there's a lot of physics, there's a lot of chemistry, there's all kinds of stuff that is hard. And now she's been accepted to a master's program that we were chatting about before we started this. So they were able to really, and I think part of it is, like you said, setting the expectations, right? The expectation management, the backwards planning. They fell right into that so well. I'm so happy as a dad. They're both great young women. They were excellent daughters. They never gave us trouble, so yeah, kind of going down the down the path here, talking about your kids. It's hard not to, but yeah. So, but no, you're exactly right. Kind of getting back to the discussion here about education and how important way to go about it. Last 2 weeks ago, we had on Elizabeth Hartman, and she talked about her master's program and how she looked at it, almost like a job thing, to where she was basically interviewing the schools, and she got X amount of dollars for her master's program with Penn State, but then a huge chunk of money from another university. So she went back to Penn State and said, well, these guys are doing this. What can you do?
That was smart.
Yeah. And they said, well, we'll do the same thing. You come with us and we'll give you this, and heck, I wouldn't have thought about that. But so, the things that you just talked about, somebody who has kids that are, maybe tweens or, they're getting close, hey, what better way to put your, brain together to think about a process with education and how to go about it. So they're not getting into whatever school they get into and then flounder for a few years, spending money that they might not ever get anything out of. So,
Right,
that's
exactly.
yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for that point. That's fantastic. So, yeah, we'll punch on here and we'll move into your work phase. So you said that you stayed at home with your kids for 19 years. With me that you homeschooled your youngest starting in the 8th grade. And I think that's so cool because the end state to that, and again, what you shared with me is that she graduated from high school with 2 college degrees.
And zero
Holy
debt.
smokes.
Zero debt.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well,
So
it's
what
because
was that like?
I harnessed the awesome power of the internet. I found the hive mind. I found a small community of people that learned alternative ways to pursue bachelor's degrees for pennies on the dollar. And I just plugged in. I dove into that platform, into that forum. It's a degree forum. I can
Right.
give you later, but I just got the wisdom of the hive mind, put together a plan, and just committed to it, and said, this is what we're going to do. By the time you graduate from high school, you're going to have these degrees. This is the way we're going to do it. These are the courses you're going to take, and it worked. And I was, we were all beside ourselves. It was kind of amazing, but
And you still have a good relationship with your daughter.
Yes, fantastic. I was like, where am I going with this story? No, so homeschooling, yeah, and staying home. So I always tell my husband that the greatest gift he ever gave me was the ability to stay home with my kids. And I recognize that it is a luxury and it's a privilege, and not everyone has the opportunity to do that. And so I do recognize that it is a gift. It is a tremendous gift. And I am grateful for the gift because I'll never get those years back. I'll never get those years back with my children. And I would not trade that for a high-speed career for the world. Now, I recognize that's not everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. It's totally okay if your choice is to go for the high-speed career. But my choice was to stay home with my kids, and I was grateful for the opportunity to do so. So
I'm going to have to wipe the corner of my eye on here. You're getting me because I believe that it's so powerful.
It's powerful. It is truly powerful. So kind of like some backstory on that.
Sure.
I kind of, when my kids were little, I kind of had this idea that, well, when they go to school, I'll start working again, right? So the moment my 4-year-old entered preschool, I thought, okay, this is it. I'm gonna get the job now. And so I actually found a part-time job working for the local symphony orchestra in Fayetteville. And I was only there for about 3 weeks. It maybe even was 2 weeks, but I got a phone call from her teacher. And while I was at work, and she said, your daughter is hysterical, because we're having a class party and you're not here. And my spirit broke. And I said, you know what? This is not worth it. This little part-time job, this career this is not worth it. I need to be with my daughter. And so I told my boss, I'm really, really sorry, but I have a preschool party I need to get to. So I left, and I knew that I was burning a bridge. I knew that opportunity would never present itself again. I knew clearly the profound choice that I was making in that moment. I was committed to it. I owned it. And I said, you know what? I'm putting my children first. And so I did. And so, as a military family, of course, we moved and went to a million different schools. And my youngest daughter was failing. She was failing. And it didn't really show up until middle school, when I would, a semester in, get a report from her teacher saying she hasn't turned in anything this semester. And I'm thinking, well, no one has told me any of this.
Right.
I had no idea what was going on at the school. And I would just find out, after the fact and when it was too late to help her. And it was very frustrating for me. It was very frustrating for her because she just assumed there was something wrong with her brain, but that wasn't it at all. And so we finally got orders again to go to Ohio, right? Like every military spouse does, I joined forums or Facebook groups. Let's be honest, we join all the Facebook groups to plug in and say, hey, where are the good communities? Where should we get a rental house? Right? We'll be there for a couple of years. Oh, here's the best neighborhood. So we got the rental house in that great neighborhood before we even got there. So we got moved into that awesome house in the awesome neighborhood, and we found out the school district that it was in was literally on a list of worst public schools in America. And I thought to myself,
ouch,
that ain't happening. That is not happening, because not only was she doing not so well at these really great schools, she is definitely going to fail if we send her to one of the worst high schools in America. Ain't happening on my watch. So I told my husband, I said, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. We've never homeschooled before, but I'm going to figure this out. And we're going to homeschool this kid because we don't have any other options. I refuse to watch my daughter fail. I refuse.
Right.
And so that first year was a nightmare. I mean, it was,
I bet.
it was, headbutting and throwing things and getting angry and I give up. I'm sending you to the school. Like it was a tough transition, but we got through it. We found a local homeschooling community that took us in. I found mentors that, kind of showed me the ropes and said, maybe try this, maybe try this. And it was the best decision we ever made for our daughter. It was incredible.
That's fantastic.
The relationships that we built in the community, the relationships that she built, and then just, the education that she was able to receive because we pulled her out of that traditional, public school system and tried something completely off the wall, which is kind of the story of my life, just trying something completely off the wall. And
well, Olivia, I just watching you and looking into your eyes, the passion that you're displaying here, it's like you remember every ounce of that and you have no regrets. I can see that. And when it comes to your kids, you do what you need to do. And sometimes the mama bear might come out, but you know what? It's for a reason, right? And it's so that's a great story because a lot of kids wind up getting into situations in the public schools, and it happens in private schools too. But let's face it, usually private schools are a little different, right? But want to see your kids fail, and we all have children that of those of us that have kids, they hit tough spots sometimes, and it's hard to watch that. Sometimes you have to let them go through it on their own, depending on what the issue is. But man, when you can step in and help out, you got to do it. You're not spoon feeding them, right? You're bringing them through the process by helping, and that's again, talk about powerful. That's a powerful story that you were able to yourself go through that transition, figure out, hey, how do I do this? And to look for help. How many times do people get in that spiral and they don't ask for help or they don't look for help because I'm going to do it. I'm hard-headed like that. I'm thinking if I can't do it, it took me years to start raising my hand and being smarter about living life. So
I have never been shy about raising my hand ever. Like I will ask a million questions.
Right.
There's no shame to my game. And so, I don't know how to do something. I'm going to figure it out,
Sure.
And we
Okay.
did. We figured it out, and she managed to graduate from high school with an associate's degree in biology and a bachelor's degree in liberal studies. And
Wow.
now she's using her dad's GI Bill to get that vet tech certification. So, it all worked out.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's another, just real quick on the education thing. Yeah, the MGI Bill or the post 9/11 is such a tool. It's a great thing to have. And then there's also on the VA side for folks that have a particular rating. Like if you're, upper rating 100%, there's Chapter 35 that you can use in lieu of the post 9/11, and that is it goes to each of your kids or your spouse. It's not divided up.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Which is it's a tremendous benefit that not everyone knows about. So that's just tidbit for folks that will be listening to this at some point. If you are a vet and you're on the upper end of the scale for disability rating, look into Chapter 35. It's a huge benefit. It winds up paying a stipend to your dependents when they go to college. It's about $1,200 a month.
Wow.
And that it helps. So,
Oh, yeah.
well, so you went through and you educated your daughter, you learned the ropes with that, and when did you start teaching the ukulele? That's something that I just think so cool. And the fact that, even on LinkedIn, you talk about that. There's some video audio recordings of you, teaching or singing. That's obviously a passion. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, so I started teaching around the same time I started teaching my daughter. We plugged into those homeschool co-ops, and there's always the expectation in those co-ops that parents need to participate. You need to take ownership of the co-op. You need to teach something. You need to provide value in some way. And so I learned how to play the ukulele when we were stationed in Hawaii. That's when I got my first ukulele, and I loved it. It's a great instrument. It's a super accessible instrument. It's it's easy to play. And so people, whether they're 5 years old or, 105, I mean, if you can still use your fingers, you can learn how to play, it's a great instrument, not a huge learning curve. So I learned how to play it fairly quickly, started performing, doing a lot of, coffee shop gigs and this sort of thing. So I'd been playing for a little while. And then when we got to our co-op, we'd have some free time, like between lunches and stuff. And sometimes I'd bring my ukulele and just kind of sit out in the hallway and just kind of, fiddle around my ukulele. And people would walk by and they're like, wow, could you teach me how to do that? And I thought, yeah, of course I can. It's so easy, right? And so one semester, they asked me if I would, try leading a class. Again, I had no idea what I was doing, but I thought, you know what, I can figure this out, and so I did. I put together, I actually put together my own library of song sheets and kind of developed my own curriculum just by doing, right? Like I learned by doing. And what more valuable way to learn, right?
Absolutely.
But, that first semester was a little rocky, just kind of trying to figure out what I was doing. But by the second semester, I had it. I was on fire and we were having fun, right? Like we would get together and it was like, it was just a jam session, because so many people want to jam, right? Like you'll see it in worship teams at churches. You'll see it amongst like band kids, whatever. People just want to make music together. And most people don't have an outlet to do it. They just don't, especially as you get older. Do you have friends that you can just get together and jam with? Like how tremendously valuable is that, right? But the ukulele gives us that ability to, at a very low entry level point, to learn an instrument quickly and get together and play songs and actually have fun jamming together, right? And so that's what we would do every week. We would just get together. I'd get lists of songs that the kids wanted to play. We'd play Riptide like a million times, right? And a bunch of other songs. But it became a lot of fun, and the kids really looked forward to it. I looked forward to it, and it was a progressive way to learn, right? So we would start with like maybe 1 or 2 chord songs. And each week we'd sort of progress a little higher. And so through it was like learning without even realizing we were learning, right? Because we were just playing music and jamming together. They didn't realize they were actually learning new chords and learning new strumming patterns and developing, higher level rhythm and all these cool things. And so,
that's so cool that you baked all of that in, and like you said, they don't even realize necessarily that they're doing it, right?
Right. And which is amazing. I always say if it's too tough, you'll never want to do it, and so let's not make it too tough. Let's make it easy enough that the lowest common denominator can participate, because as long as you can participate, you're going to progress, right? It's just natural. You're going to progress by doing. And so, I started doing that, and it just became my thing. I started teaching no matter where we lived. I taught in Ohio. I taught in Georgia. Everywhere we went as homeschoolers, I plugged into those communities, and I was the ukulele teacher in that community. And so I like to think that I was sort of leaving little ukulele armies, wherever I went. I would teach those kids, and then they would in turn teach their siblings, and then they teach their friends. And then 2 years later, they're sending me videos of their own little jam circles, and I'm like, this is amazing.
That's incredible. I was going to say, I bet you left a trail of broken hearts every time you had to leave, because they were probably like, oh my God, Miss Olivia's, no, you're not going to be here. But the ability to stay connected on social media, kind of eases some of that. But I can imagine how excited they were to see you every time you guys got together. And I'm sure that, when the pandemic hit, you probably tried to figure out how you were going to, continue to do that at some point. That everyone kind of struggled with the whole pandemic and, how life is going to continue. Yeah. But, you mentioned Ohio twice now, and you are the third guest in a row who has lived in Ohio. The previous 2 actually grew up in Ohio and went back to Ohio. And nice. I know that you would know the Pretenders, right? Back to Ohio.
Are they from Ohio?
Well, no, the song. Okay. That's part of the refrain. Went back to Ohio. The Pretenders. Yeah, one of the younger gals. She just didn't see that, so I had to send her the. So anyhow, but I thought that was interesting that now 3 guests have some connection with Ohio. So there must be the water, maybe, I don't know.
Huge population of people in Ohio.
Yeah. Well, every time there's a presidential election, Ohio is one of those, states, right? That's one of the deciding states because of that, I guess. But so no, that's exciting. I like to hear cool stories about that, and that's so unique because I think you're the only person I know that plays the ukulele. But when you bring your charisma and your spirit and your positivity to what you do, it's not just with the ukulele. I know that you do it in everything you do. That's one of the things that attracted to you on LinkedIn was that positivity and that, hey, she's got something going on here. This is cool. And so, that's just a skill. I think it's something that is developed over time, but not everybody has it. Being likable is such a big deal. You don't have to be likable, right? But if you are, man, that's huge. People want to gravitate to you. And if you're smart and likable, hey, that's kind of the whole deal, right? So,
right. Well, I appreciate that. That wasn't always the case for me. I was never the popular kid in school. I was always the one that, felt like I was the outsider looking in. And, I didn't realize a lot of it was because I was an introvert, right. And so I would always compare myself to the other kids that were, the center of attention. And wow, why does everyone wonder why Sarah isn't here? And nobody ever wonders why I'm not here, and you start to take those things to heart when you're young and you don't recognize, oh, it's because my personality is different. It's because I'm a different type of person. I'm much more sensitive. I'm much more quiet. I'm much more retrospective. I am an introvert, so I'm not going to be the center of attention like Sarah or whoever, And so,
You hear that, Sarah?
no, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's a Sarah out there that was a center of attention. I have a character in my head, and that's her name.
Yeah, I'm teasing you. Yeah.
No, but I just think that you develop a deep empathy when you are on the outside looking in.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
I just take that with me.
No,
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, so many of us when we're younger, don't bloom or don't
Right.
kind of get those things until you're a little older, right? Until you have some perspective in life. Maybe you have a mentor that talks to you about things, or whatever it is. And probably a lot of it is just life experience, and then you look back on things and you see, wow, I thought it was this, but it was actually something different. Maybe that was holding you back or whatever.
Right.
As a kid, I shared this with you before we, hit the record. My folks split up, and my dad left. And I mean, I know he didn't leave because of me. My folks had problems, but it was a feeling of emptiness. You felt like, well, why did my dad care enough to stay? And then you grow up and realize that it's not that easy. There's other things happen, but I carried that burden, and I was anxious around men because I didn't have a dad, and I didn't know. I just felt awkward, and that would frustrate me. It would confound me. And it wasn't until I got older and my dad and I connected again when I was 17, and he had changed. I mean, he had found religion, and he was just, it's like, who is this guy?
Wow.
I never thought I'd have a relationship with my dad, but that helped change understanding that what I thought was happening wasn't necessarily the case. I just saw it from my perspective. I wasn't looking beyond, and I was a kid too, right? You don't necessarily have those skills when you're younger, but yeah, so we all develop over time, and it's cool that you have figured these things out now, because we're all older, but sometimes you don't figure things out until you're much older. But it looks like you have been able to dive into the deep end because you're not afraid, whether it's getting your education, whether it's teaching your kids, whether it's making that decision to stay home instead of pursuing, that professional lifestyle. My wife is a mechanical engineer, and she worked for about 8 years before we had, well, actually a little longer than that, before we had kids. But at some point, she too decided, you know what, this is only happening for a small period of time, and I think it's best that I stay home. And of course, we had an adjustment in income, but it was worth every cent. That time that she put into the kids, I think my kids would have been okay regardless because of who they are.
Right.
But man, she sure did shape them, and she sure did make that period of our life very livable, because it would have been, the jobs I had were, very demanding, and I never worried about her being home without me.
Right.
Never. Obviously you miss, but I was never worried, gosh, something's going to come up and my wife's not going to be able to handle it. That was never a thought. So she enabled me to have, time at work where I wasn't worried about stuff because she was so capable.
That's powerful.
But
yeah, that's powerful.
yeah, no, it is. And, so she made that same choice. And so kind of getting back into the flow of the story here. So, you've made those choices, and you're at the point now to where your youngest daughter has left for college, and you're looking at yourself and you're saying, who am I now? Right? What's this next chapter in life? So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So this past summer, she left for vet tech school and here I am with an empty nest. So,
Right.
I have a lot of hours on my hands now that I'm no longer homeschooling. And so I thought, well, it's time to get a job, I mean, with no pressure from my husband. I mean, he'd be perfectly fine no matter what choice I make, but I was ready,
Right.
I was
He's a good
ready.
man.
He's a great man. No, he's a wonderful man, supports any of my crazy ideas. But, I needed to find something to fill my days with. And so I didn't really know where to start, how do you come out of 19 years of parenting and go, okay, I'm going to get a job now?
Right.
Like
Right.
and I've actually seen stay-home parents struggle with this. Like after parenting their kids for all these years, they really come to this point where they're like, so what now? What do I do now? Because so much of your identity is wrapped around that parent role. So much of my day-to-day was wrapped around that parent role. Where does she need to be? Who do we need to connect with? What do we need to do? And now it's
Right.
all about me.
Right.
And that's weird.
And it ends in one day, right? It seems like it's just like there's this hard cutoff, and that's like the title of the show, What's Next, right? That's exactly right. When you're transitioning, what is next? Sometimes transitions come out of the blue. Other times they're coming. So you're able to plan for them. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this transition, but the empty nest thing is real. Just like when you transition from military service, a lot of folks, they kind of think on the periphery that yes, military, but once they're out, they miss it more than they probably anticipated that they would. As a Marine, I even to today, I miss the brotherhood, the sisterhood, the camaraderie with your fellow Marines and sailors, because they're Navy, Marine Corps, we're a good team, and it's tough. And a lot of folks stumble over that, and they have a hard time getting past that, finding a job that is comparable. And there's nothing's going to be, there's no parity there, right? I think,
right.
at least as a Marine, you're never going to find the Marine Corps outside of the Marine Corps.
Right.
But, finding that sense of purpose and understanding, where you are in your transition and what you need to do, those are all things that a lot of people struggle with, because sometimes you don't know until you're doing. I think we talked a little bit about that. You learn by doing. And as best as you can plan things, you got to have a plan, but you also have to be in the game as you're going through that transition. And like Herb Thompson said, you want to own your journey, right? That's kind of his tagline.
Yeah.
And so this is all happening, and then what's next for me? All the things that you may have done that were associated with your daughter, maybe taking her places, to things that she's doing, and maybe some of the other parents you're friends with, that starts to slow down a bit. And then you're looking at, okay, yeah, I do want to go back to work. And, so the middle spouse component to that, and the time at home. So you had two, depending on how you look at it, two obstacles to clear, right?
Right.
Because those two things. So let's talk about that.
Completely. Yeah. Well, so, it's like we had a big PCS in the middle of the pandemic last summer, and there was a lot of operational needs, which I took on all of it. How do we sell the house, get the pod, find temporary housing? I handled all of it because I've always handled all of it. Right. My husband is very busy at work, and I'm the one at home, so I might as well handle it. Right. So did all that PCS. Once the boxes were unpacked, all the art was on the wall, the plants were in place. All of a sudden, I have a lot of time on my hands. I've run out of things to do, and I thought I need to get a job. So I did what I thought that you're supposed to do. I went on Indeed, I think, and I just started looking for openings, because how else do you look for a job? I didn't know. I had no idea, right?
Right.
I'm just looking at stuff locally, like what can I do? What's part-time? What's close to the house? Like, just like spraying and praying, just like, oh, that sounds good. I think I could do that, and I found an opportunity here at the local Armed Forces YMCA, right? And I thought, oh, that's perfect. It's perfect because it's local, it's right here on post, and I'm a military spouse. Why wouldn't they hire me?
Right.
I love this community. So I put together a resume. I watched YouTube videos. I watched my good, I'm a fangirl for Madeline Mann. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm a big fangirl for Madeline Mann. So I watched her for like 2 weeks straight, trying to figure out how do I even write a resume? And so I used like her, her expertise to draft this resume. I put together a cover letter and I sent an email to the hiring manager. And I thought it was the most charming message, right? Like I crafted it. I sent it to my sister. I was like, well, how does this sound? And I thought it was super charming, right? And I thought there's no way they're not going to give me an interview because it's so charming. Crickets, right? Like I didn't hear it, nothing. Nobody ever contacted me back. And then it occurred to me later that like, well, why would they? Like my resume is a mess. I don't know anybody locally. There's nobody that can vouch for me. Like, why would they contact me back? Like I wasn't a good candidate. And I didn't really realize that until I joined LinkedIn. And I did. I joined LinkedIn in November.
The power of LinkedIn and the community that you become part of is absolutely incredible. And again, you don't know what you don't know.
It's eye-opening.
And boy, yeah. And, isn't that such a gut-wrenching feeling to spend all that time and effort creating that masterpiece that's the resume. And then, like you said, there's crickets. It breaks your heart. It also makes you mad, and it's like, hey, what the heck's wrong with those guys? I'm very, so yes, I think so many people go, we all go through that.
True.
It's tough.
It's true. And, my sister was the one who told me, all of my job offers came from LinkedIn. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just join LinkedIn and then all these recruiters will come, knocking at my door. And of course, that's not what happened, right? So I went to one of Michael Quinn's Mastering LinkedIn webinars and kind of learned how to use the platform. I hadn't even considered about like posting content, prior to his 30-day content posting challenge. And so that really opened like my eyes to the possibilities on LinkedIn, and I just remember like the day after he gave that challenge, I was like, all right, we're doing this. I'm committing to this. It feels crazy. It feels completely crazy that I'm about to get really like vulnerable and put my personal story on this very public platform. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I think it's going to do something for me. I'm not quite sure what it is, but we're just going to see what happens, right?
Go for it.
So, that very next day I put a post up and it's still in my featured section on my LinkedIn profile now. I put a story up, was talking about my challenge of trying to figure out what to put in my headline. Like, what am I? I'm a homeschool. Well, I was a homeschool mom. Like, what am I now? Like, what do I put in my headline? And so that was the post that I put that day. And I remember Michael Quinn like commented on it. And I thought, And so I kept going. Like I kept putting out more content that was sort of like that, kind of telling like that personal story, talking about my struggles and this and that. And I just kept at it for those 30 days. And it was interesting because somewhere along the line, people started DMing me, were like, hey, I really enjoy your content. Could you write content for me? And so I took up one person on that. And I started writing content for this one individual and which opened the door to more like freelance social media type stuff. Hey, I think that you're pretty good at social media. Would you consider doing this for me? And so those types of offers started pouring in and I thought, oh, like I really enjoy doing this,
Right.
I really do enjoy the social media stuff. And so, one thing led to another. And a couple months later, that's when Michael Quinn DMs me on LinkedIn one day. I was like, hey, I think I might have something for you. You mind if I give you a call?
Wow. That's cool. Yeah. During that time, I think is when I crossed you too, because you were doing that. So you were, there was a spike in activity and I said, who is this Olivia gal? What's this all about? And then, so anyhow, yeah. So like I said, you're very, very likable. What you do is so relatable and the ability to, and I mean, you hear it so much, especially on LinkedIn about being vulnerable and being the real, genuine people see that and they know it when they see it. They also know when folks aren't, and you are the real McCoy. And that's just in fact, again, with the guests that we've had on this program, everyone has been very similar in terms of feeling good. And sometimes it's hard, but to open up and to be vulnerable and to talk about those things. And it's just so great when people feel that they can do that because it opens up the door for other people too, right?
Yeah.
It helps you but you being vulnerable and being real helps other people say, wow, I had that same problem, or I experienced something like that as well. Or the way you explain how you got through something, that might be that lifeline that somebody out there needs. And it came from you randomly, talking about an experience that you had or in your life. It's just, it's amazing the ability to connect with people. And, the fact that LinkedIn does that. And it worked with you. See, Michael Quinn's a smart guy. He saw you right away and, hey, there's something special about Olivia, right? So he got up with you, right? He said he sent you that DM. So what happened from there?
Yeah, so he sent me a DM on LinkedIn, and of course he had been someone that I had been, because he's the 2-time top voice, right? Like, I mean, everybody on LinkedIn who's in our military community knows who he is, right? And so
Sure.
I had just kind of been watching him from, afar, like everybody else. And so it was kind of weird when he DMs me. He's like, hey, I might have something for you. Mind if I give you a call? And I'm like, okay. And he was such a nice guy on the phone. And I was like, yeah, okay. And what was interesting was that when he called me, he was like, so what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't have a clue, man. Like, I know that I want to do something with my military community. Like, I know that, but as far as like what that looks like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, whatever, like I'll do whatever, And he said, well, I might have something for you. Talk to my COO tomorrow and we'll see what we can do. And it's like, okay, great. And so the next day I talked to the COO and she said, yeah, would you consider maybe doing, social media management? And I thought, okay, I'll consider it. We talked again. She kind of, she gave me like the job description. We kind of did all those formalities and whatever. And so she gave me a few days to think about it. And I did. I thought about it a lot.
Right.
I thought about it too much. I really thought about it too much. Because when I called her, again, to kind of give her my answer, I said, thanks, but no thanks. I said, this is too much. I said, I've never had a full-time job. I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know if I can juggle all these things. And then, like, honestly though, my worst fear was that I was going to let them down. I thought myself, the worst thing that can happen here is I'm going to let Michael Quinn down. He's going to take this risk. He's going to take this chance on me, and I'm going to do a terrible job, and I'm going to let down the team. And that scared me to death. And I didn't want to do it. And so I told her, I really appreciate it, but I don't think I'm the right person. And that was that. She said, well, no, we respect your decision. Thanks for letting us know.
All those inner demons were, coming out, tamping you down, trying to tell you, you're not worthy, or whatever,
It's true.
Taking that next step, or, believing that you're is huge. Like in the military, you get that next job, whether it's the next promotion or the next job you go to, because you're always going progressively higher in your responsibilities. And then you look at the next job, you're like, you read, geez, I hope I can do that. You better figure it out, right?
Yeah, no kidding. And I had a lot of that, I did. And it's not that I doubted my ability to figure things out. I mean, I've always been able to figure things out.
Right.
And I like to think that when I take on a project, I want to do it well. Like I'm really passionate about doing a job well. But I was so afraid. to let them down that I just said, no, thanks, no thanks. And she was going to go ahead and post the job, publicly and start, looking for candidates outside of me. I was their first choice. I was their first pick. And so she was getting ready to, post it and start looking for other people. And so I think this was,
I bet they were disappointed.
They were. And
I thought, look at who we got. Yeah, look at who we got. This is going to be awesome. And then it was like, no, what does that mean?
Right. And I think that they were I think Mike was a little surprised that I said no,
Sure, I bet.
So, and this was probably like on a Tuesday, and by Friday, and I had already made peace with my decision. I'd already made peace. I was like, you know what? I'm probably never going to have an opportunity like this again, but it's okay. It's okay. I'd made peace with that. I just said, it's okay. If I never work, it's okay. Right.
Right.
He texts me on Friday morning. He's like, you got a minute for a phone call. And I was like, crap. Yes, I did, right? And so I got on the phone with him and he's like, I really think that you might be experiencing imposter syndrome. He said, because I think you'd be great at this. And I thought, oh man, like, do you really think that, and I just let him know. I was like, look, I've never done this before. I don't want to let you guys down. I just, I am having a lot of that fear. And he said, look, just take the weekend to think about it. Just take the weekend to think about it. And I said, I will. I'll talk to my husband about it. I'll think this through. And he said, because by Monday, we're going to go ahead and post this publicly and start looking for other candidates. I was like, no problem. Thanks for giving me a second chance. And I did. I took the weekend. And I really thought, what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is that I do a terrible job and I quit or they fire me, right? That's right. That is literally the worst thing that could happen. And how bad is that really? How bad is that? It's not the worst thing in the world if that happened.
Right.
So I thought this is the opportunity of a lifetime. Someone is handing me a position saying, I'm going to pay you a salary. You can do it at home. This is fully remote, and you can do whatever you want. Like it wasn't even like you're going to take over the position from someone else. It's like, this is a brand new position. We're a startup. You can just take this and run with it. We trust you. And like, it was such a tremendous opportunity. It was the unicorn job that I had been hoping for. And I thought, if I don't do this now, I will do this never. And so Monday morning, I called the COO up and I said, okay, let's do it. I'm all in. So that's how it happened. And it was the best decision. I do not regret it for a second. I am absolutely loving life right now. So opportunity.
And you can see it written all over your face. There's higher military is just beaming from your face.
Yes.
That's such a great story because so many people with the imposter syndrome and they don't want to talk about it because it can be overwhelming, and for whatever reason you're doubting yourself or you're putting in you're kind of bottlenecking yourself in certain areas to where if you take that deep breath, obviously this is simplification, but you take that deep breath and you decide, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Really, if I fail, at least I tried.
Exactly.
And I can learn from it. I can learn from this and turn it into something better later. And it's just you have to believe that. And it's true. If you're willing to
permission, you have to give yourself permission to fail. Like,
absolutely.
If you tried and you fail, it's okay. It really is okay. And so I think that once I gave myself that permission, I was like, let's do this. Let's just go all in and see what happens. And so, yeah, I'm glad I did.
Yeah, well, absolutely. That's a similar thing with, Sarah Carell and me, our relationship. We've been connected for, probably a little more than a year. And at some point, she said, hey, Scott, and we had a conversation about me joining her platform under Power Story. And she was like, hey, I trust you. When you said that resonates, right? I trust you. I think that you would be someone that could, bring something story-wise to what we're doing. And it's powerful. It's enlightening. It's freeing to have somebody, I trust you, and they do. And then they let you go forth and do what it is you're here to do. And that's so cool. And the fact that you have found this in a job, how many people find a job that's so cool like this, something that you want to do, you could be at home, you're getting paid. What's the downside, right? That's crazy.
It's a tremendous blessing. I am beyond grateful for the opportunity. So I don't take it lightly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, the folks at higher military are doing fantastic stuff. I've been watching them, for, a couple of years now. And Michael Quinn has grown not just his brand, but he's come up with, different buckets of work. Yeah. And, he's tying them smartly together too, which is pretty cool. So now, how long have you been working for higher military?
I started in April, so I'm right around the 3 to 4
Right.
months.
So,
Yeah.
right. And you're still there. So evidently you're doing good stuff. Yeah,
They haven't kicked me out yet.
that's right. Yeah. Like I said, he has a knack for people, right? He's been able to smartly find the right people for the right positions, empower them to do what they do. And, he's benefiting from everyone's good work. It's hard sometimes to find somebody that is willing to empower the folks that work with them to allow them to do their jobs. It's great when you can find someone that gives you some guidance, let you go out and do what you do, and then you do connect back. You make sure that you're still tracking, and anything that he might want you to know, he's going to tell you about. But it's a blessing to have somebody that gives you the opportunity and lets you do your stuff. So
Yeah.
now, what you're doing now, is there, what's happening now with higher military? What can you tell us? What do you have coming up, or what's happening now?
I mean, lots of things are happening. I mean, it's so exciting to watch the growth, I mean, and at the end of the day, we're just here to help service members and military spouses get jobs. I mean, that's like,
Right.
no matter how many different pockets of things, at the end of the day, that's what we're doing, and so
Right.
as long as we can just stay mission focused, we're doing amazing. And it's like you said, I mean, Mike just has this like incredible ability to find talented people. Like the recruiters Kate, the recruiter he just hired, is amazing. Lucy, our recruiting manager, is amazing. Like he has this knack for finding amazing people and just bringing them all on board. And to see like this group growing and like just all the things that are happening behind the scenes, it makes me very excited. It makes me excited for our community, for the opportunities that we are facilitating for our bigger military community.
Right.
I am all on board. I am 100% committed and passionate about this, and can't wait to see, what more we can do, to facilitate these opportunities. So
Right.
I'm just excited.
Yes. No. And heck yeah, it's good to be passionate, and it's good to be able to plug in to a passion through your work. Talking, earlier in our conversation, I was talking about finding, purpose, and no Marine's going to find the Marine Corps outside of the Marine Corps, right? Because it's just that special. But sometimes you're not going to find passion in a job. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So what do? So you look for passion in other parts of your life, either through volunteering or helping others or whatever it may be, taking on, some kind of physical activity and, being a runner or whatever.
I guess to answer your question a little more specifically, like for instance, yesterday we had these 100% remote work opportunities that this organization had specifically created for military spouses. And so we put that out on social, and I think we have like 26 shares already. And like, I mean, I don't even know how many applications we've got pouring in for military
Right.
spouses that we found on LinkedIn and in Facebook groups and all these other places. But it's so exciting to see that. It's so exciting to find these opportunities and be able to give them to our community, and to really, we're targeting spouses, and that's the community
Yes.
that I'm passionate about. Like, I get it. Like I've been there, done that. Like I understand how exciting it is when you find a remote opportunity. I get it. And
Right.
so to be able to share that with our community, it pumps me up. And I know it pumps up our entire team.
Right.
Every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, we go live from the Higher Military page. I host it every week. I don't love it. I don't love being on camera. I hate being in the spotlight, but I do it. I do it not for me. I do it for my community, because we've
Amen.
got so many skill bridge opportunities that literally change lives for transitioning service members. Like, these opportunities literally are the bridge between a really rough transition and being able to find employment when you get out. Like, it changes lives. And so I'm like,
Yes.
you know what? This is not about me. This is about our community. This is about presenting these opportunities to our people. And so I'm going to show up every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, whether I like it or not, so that our account managers can say, hey, we've got these opportunities. We just need candidates. We
Right.
just need you guys to register. go to hiremilitary.us and register so that we can put you into these positions, because we want to make this transition easier for you. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
And you,
crazy passionate.
no, and that's yes. I mean, and that passion like that is contagious, right? Folks want to be with folks that are passionate, folks that are able to connect the dots and be a happy warrior about it while you're doing it.
Right.
And you read my mind, because I was getting ready to ask you exactly what you just, went into. And it's so cool that Hire Military hasn't forgotten the importance of the spouse that's connected with that guy or gal that is in service. And because there are so much behind the scenes in marriages with these, and even, think about the ones that are both in the service. That's a whole nother thing, right? But having the spouse that follows the military member, that's tough, because they do those things like you talked about. Hey, there's a move. Well, guess what? My husband is already at his next job because he had to be there. I have to pack the house up. I've never done that, but then over time you become the duty expert, right? And then your years doing those things, those are all marketable things.
Right.
It's just how do you frame that when you're talking about employment later? That's that's a unique talent to be able to find those things that you did, because it's a job. You're working. You're just, you're not getting a paycheck. You're getting, the goodness of being at home, and, the relationships with your kids and all the things that are great about being home. But it's hard to figure out how to turn those into selling points, when you're talking to a recruiter, or when you're trying to figure out how to write that resume. And I know that, Hire Military is good with stuff like that. They help folks, figure those things out, shape those things. And the Skill Bridge opportunity is incredible, because the transit, as a guy who transitioned from the military, and I won't go into my transition story, but it was 2012, and I think Skill Bridge came along around 2015-ish, maybe 16. Boy, what an incredible opportunity. You're blessed enough to be approved, and then to go for 3 to 6 months, where you're going to that job, for better word, like an internship or a fellowship, whatever you want to call it. And the military is still paying you. Right. So you're getting paid, and you're not going into your job in the military. You're going to that location, or maybe now it's, online because of COVID or whatever. It's gotten a little better, but the point is, you're putting on civilian attire. You're going to an organization, and you're seeing that there's life outside of the culture that and you're starting to, kind of take sips from the straw, that you can get immersed into what things are going to look like. And hopefully you sync with those folks and it turns into a job. That's the best case scenario. Yeah. But if it doesn't, at least you have that experience, and you have your toe in the deep end, and, it helps you figure out that transition. It absolutely makes that transition easier. The tough part about Skill Bridge is not everyone gets that opportunity. Right. When you look at that, the DOD, they're facing forward for obvious reasons, right? They fight and win our nation's battle. And over the years, they've gotten better about, kind of shifting to looking to the left when folks are leaving, and trying to create options for them to make that transition easier. It's a hard sell for the military, because they're not in the game of helping you find a job. I mean, how many employers would say, yeah, hey, that's a great program. I'm going to let you leave for 3 months or 6 months so that you can find another job. I'm still going to pay you. I mean, who would do that? Nobody. Now, of course, it's a different it's a different transition, but folks that get into this program are blessed. And I think most of them realize that, because not everyone has the opportunity to do that, because the military has a mission, and, and I see that a lot.
There's not a lot of education about it. I mean, frankly, a lot of people just don't even know it exists.
Right.
There's a lot of misconceptions about how it works, and so that's kind of one of the big hurdles we have to get over, is just getting the word out, to installations and to people in leadership to say, hey, when you've got people who are transitioning out, make sure they know about this program.
Right.
That's a problem right now.
Yeah, and leadership has to understand it too, right? They have to figure out, who can I do with and for how long,
Right.
and at some point they're going to be the gal or guy that's in the seat who's transitioning out, and what opportunities are they going to have?
Right.
Are they going to be fortunate enough to have a boss that says, yeah, you're one of my top performers, but you're leaving, so here you go. This is for you. Go forth and have a great transition.
Yes.
It's not everyone can do that. It's tough.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, one thing we didn't talk about is the mill spouse marketer. I know that. Can you talk just briefly about that?
Sure. Yeah. So a friend of mine, Selena, and I just had a crazy idea a few months back that we wanted to have a cocktail hour with other people that are doing social media.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? All on Zoom, because there's so many freelancing mill spouses that are doing digital marketing. And so we thought, let's get together, let's have cocktails, and let's just kind of talk about what we do. Let's take the power of the hive mind and ask each other questions. What tools are you using? What's working for you on Instagram? Like what do you do on LinkedIn? Let's learn from each other. And so we started doing it weekly. Now we've moved to monthly. We actually have a meeting tonight. Looking forward to that. And
Nice.
So, yeah, it's been great. It's a very small little community, but we've formed friendships. We've formed these bonds, and it's been priceless. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
that.
It is. Yeah, is I think it's April Mitchell. Does that? She's a mill spouse, but she's also an entrepreneur. And I hope I'm getting the last name right. I don't have LinkedIn open, but yeah, I think she's the wife of a squadron commander, I guess, on the East Coast there in the Marine Corps.
I'm sure I know you were talking about it if I saw her on LinkedIn.
Well, you should probably get connected with her, because you guys remind me of each other. Your passion, the fact that you're both military spouses who are, creating this existence and making it available for others to, find that next step with a career, something that maybe they didn't even think would be something they would have the ability to do, or maybe you open the door to say, hey, that looks cool. Yeah, I want to try that.
Yeah.
I'll, after we're done talking, I'll verify, and I'm pretty sure that's right. But I want you guys to get connected, because I think you guys have a lot in common. I think there's some goodness there to, the goodness of LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
Well, Olivia, we've been talking now. Let me look at my watch.
I think I have a call with my boss soon. So
yeah. Well, and we've been on for about an hour and, maybe 10 minutes of the time. This has been, powerful is an understatement. This has been fantastic. And before we, stop recording here, I want to shift gears and let Sarah come in here. And, what are you thinking, Sarah? What's going on?
Oh gosh, I loved hearing you share. I'm following now Michael Quinn. I think he's amazing because of you. I think Higher Military is amazing because of how you've already presented the company. I've always felt like the creative, musical, artistic people are a perfect complement to the military. And you just fit that perfectly. Like, I completely understand why Michael Quinn would want you. And there's also too, there's so many similarities. I mean, if we ever had coffee, your mind would be blown how many similarities you and I have. Like, it's weird. It's really crazy. But that's why I think everything that you shared and kind of who you are really resonates with me. I feel like I know you already. I love the fact that I think what is so inspiring about you, and I think especially if people have been used to being institutionalized, like in the military, somebody like you who comes and totally thinks outside the box is showing another way. It's showing another option. And the ideas that you have, the way that you have the courage to really listen inside and say, you know what, this is not resonating. This is not fitting. I'm going to have my child at home. I'm really nervous about the homeschooling, and you did it. And then she has 2 degrees by the time she graduates from high school. That blows my mind. Again, I had 4 boys. I raised 4 boys, and I always wish like, oh, can I do this homeschooling thing? But it felt very new. And so I didn't have the confidence to do that at the time, but I just love that you did it. I'm very grateful that the boys did, they did well, they did fine, but I love the great education that you can give them homeschooling. And there was, gosh, so many different things. Love the higher military. So I love that idea too. So if I know people who are military spouses, can I just say, hey, go to higher military and find Olivia? Is that how we would do it, or how do people find you?
You could go to LinkedIn. You could certainly go to LinkedIn and find me, and then I'll point you wherever you need to go. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay. Yeah. I think that overall though, I really appreciate you. I appreciate also even what you were sharing about when you were a kid. It's like, how do we tell these kids too about how much value they have? Like, look at all the value you had.
Amen.
You were not fitting in because you were probably thinking bigger picture of, creatively, somebody who could think of solutions, someone who could figure things out. So anyway, I just have a lot of appreciation for you. And again, I appreciate too how you have really made higher military look good. Like, that is a huge resource for me now to send people to.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Thank you. Happy to help.
Yeah. And Sarah will too. Sarah's a person of her word. If she says she's going to do it, you better get your catcher's mitt on, because you're going to.
Awesome. Love it. Love it.
Yeah. Well, this is, as Sarah said, there's just so many great things that, came of this discussion. As we talked about in the beginning, can I talk for that long? We filled it easily. I mean, we could probably keep going, right? But, we've learned so much about you. We've learned, there's important parts of our lives. We all have transitions. You've been through many transitions as a male spouse. As Sarah talked about, you were brave enough to take the home, by the throttle there and make it work. I honestly don't think that I could have done that. I don't think that I would have had the patience. I'm not patient by nature. Now, having kids, I became better, and maybe when you get older, you get a little less, but, hats off to you for figuring that out. Even if it's on the fly, you conquered it. And like Sarah said, look at the results, the results speak for themselves, and you enabled your daughter's future. And of course, she was part of that too. But if it wasn't for you and your husband deciding those things and taking the ball and running with it, just like you deciding, higher military is going to work. I'm going to make that part of my portfolio because I believe that it's the right thing. And thank God that Michael Quinn, was good enough to get back to you, because again, there's so many lessons learned. And I know that once we stop the record on this and we're going to download, and it's going to eventually go to YouTube. I hope that a lot of folks see this and get the value that you bring with your story. That's what this is all about: sharing stories. What's next in life, and how can we open the door for other people who need to hear stories like this. So it has been an absolute pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for saying yes. So you're good at saying yes. Thanks for saying yes and coming on time with Sarah and me here. It's just been fantastic.
Awesome. Well, you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.
Well,
thank you, Olivia.
You do as well. God bless you. Semper Fi to your husband. Even though he's an Army guy, but we're all one team. Yeah. God bless you guys.
Yeah, you too. We'll see you next time.
All righty. Take care. Sarah, I'm going to stop recording here.